Peeved with many questions, Takumi inquires how Maledict was able to obtain such a unique item. The dark magician tells him that it was something given to him by his predecessor, an object seemingly made in Azuma. Maledict mentions that the item goes back to ancient times and attacks Takumi with a skeletal monster with gaping teeth. Maledict claims that the object is also capable of boosting one's mana. Swinging his incredible powerhouse of a wrench, Takumi batters the skeletal monster into pieces, impressing the likes of the dark magician with his immense strength. With his next attack, Takumi aims to take down the magician himself, who is in awe of his abilities. Wearing a determined face, Takumi claims that he is looking to end things quickly. Maledict is shocked, stunned by his swift speed, and barely manages to block the blow with his shield. Joyous that he was able to block the attack, the magician tells him that the barrier blocks all physical attacks. Takumi retreats to his position and wonders how many surprises this world has to offer to him. Maledict goes on a rant about his profession being that of a mage, meaning that it is just common sense for someone like him to bear a defense mechanism against physical attacks. Maledict analyzes that Takumi's physical capabilities surmount the level of a 6th grade, which makes him believe that Takumi is just a lowly B-ranker warrior. This analysis only comes to disappoint the dark mage, who believes that Takumi is nothing more than a scrub. However, he still finds himself struggling against this behemoth's attacks. Damn, bro doesn't realize that he's facing a god. Maledict deploys another attack, in an effort to swarm Takumi with his monsters, thinking that he would get overwhelmed by the absurd number of monsters. Takumi deploys godlike reflexes, and casually dodges all of the attacks, causing the magician's eyes to glare open wide, as his attack has just proven to be useless. Takumi stands tall and mocks the magician for using such a lowly attack. Oh, gonna need a lot of ice for that one, because he got roasted. Observing this battle from the side is Vito Rai, who is losing his composure, realizing that Takumi quite literally evaded all of those strikes. Vito is starting to believe that the kid might have a shot at taking down the dark magician with his might. Instead of rage, Maledict only praises Takumi's incredible abilities and thinks that he is the prodigy for developing such talent at such a young age. He is beaming with his many questions and is even more impressed than the guinea pig elf that he considers to be Eltico. When Takumi inquires about Eltico, Maledict tells him that she is supposed to be an elf-demon hybrid, a monster considered forbidden. Hearing his words, Vito Rai is stunned, but Takumi remains unfazed. The scene jumps back to Eltico's situation against her strugglesome opponent. Eltico is in a terrible state in this battle, with Frau and Pip providing support. Frau manages to heal her back to full strength and thinks that she doesn't have any chance of attacking their opponent with her explosive gun. Her only option is to continue to support Eltico, hoping that she can take them down. Before her, the treacherous monster recognizes Frau's strength and support, knowing that this battle is just going to keep him even busier. What's more is that Maledict is provoking him on the side, mocking the S-ranker for not being able to defeat a bunch of slaves at once. This provocation triggers him to the point that the guy experiences his strongest transformation. Maledict hails his transformation ability as one of the strongest all-beast men. Bearing a monstrous physique and a hound-like stature, Bistcha's strength has now surpassed that of even the dark magician himself. Dude's final form is him turning into a dog-faced Arnold Schwarzenegger. With his daunting yet overwhelming transformation, Bistcha instantly teleports behind Frau and steals her healing gun, permanently severing their support. The sadistic monster intends to savor Frau as his final meal, but before that, he pummels Eltico with a punch that sends her flying. Eltico is in a near-death state on the ground, while Frau doesn't know what she should be doing in this situation. Bistcha mocks the elf girl for even thinking about the concept of escape, reminding her that she is cursed, even among the elves. Bistcha believes that her life was nothing short of miserable even then. Her words are not well received by Eltico, who is absolutely furious. Eltico is hammered with another frontal kick, crashing into the ground. Bistcha exercises his heinous treatment of others and states that Eltico is nothing more than a tool at the end of the day. Bistcha goes as far as to reveal that Eltico's mother was the reason she ever managed even to escape, and that today will be her end. With her blood pouring out of every orifice, Eltico dives into her tremendously tragic past and the childhood she suffered. She remembers the gentle yet soothing voice of her mother, who had been storing mana in a stone specifically for Eltico's sake. The stone could transport a singular person, aiming to transport Eltico to the elven village at once. Her loving mother's final wish is to see her daughter off for the final time, hoping for her to live on, until she finds a reason to smile once more. Just as she was about to be seized by the organization, Eltiko's mother sent her off, and because of her curse, she received a tough childhood growing up, facing hardships one after the other. No, she's got a more tragic story than the entire cast of Demon Slayer. Her mother's words also advised her to find someone who would deeply care for her, which happened to become Frau's support the day she revived Eltiko. Remembering her mother's final few words, Eltiko stands once more, acknowledging that she has faced every single misery in her life, without receiving an ounce of good luck. Instead of pity for herself, Eltiko has realized that her life's singular purpose is to protect Frau. That is the reason she has regained her body's will to fight once more, shocking the likes of Vito Rai. Maledic doesn't find her reasoning to be all that interesting, and decides to order the rest of his goons to take care of them. His men are raring to go, waiting for their moment to defeat the intruders. However, Bischa tells him that he wants to handle this matter on his own accord, in his transformation. My guy is too proud of his muscles apparently. Maledic expresses that he wants to serve the Alpha slice of despair, something that she will never forget, as if to let her taste the crushing weight of reality. However, Vito Rai has had enough, and finally finds himself influenced by the actions of Takumi and his friends. With this change of heart, he comes face to face with dozens of men against one. Of course, these men all believe that Vito's just paying a typical visit, and go on to mock him for being a cowardly knight who fled from his enemies. As if he has changed his ways, Vito replies that he has surprised himself, remembering both Eltiko and Takumi, declaring himself to be the lame ex-knight who has come to stop their schemes once and for all. We are introduced to Vito's past, as he belonged to Kulo, a small country to the east. Vito is the son of a nobleman, who saw his father receive praise from all of the people. Vito admired his father to an incredible extent, and remembers spending precious memories mounted on his back. His father was known to be the strongest knight of their kingdom, and the very man that he admired most to become, once he grew up. Vito's only desire in life was to become a man even his father would be proud of. However, everything changed when reality broke for the aspiring young boy. In an unforeseen tragic incident, Vito's mistake of going into the Forbidden Forest allowed for a monster's attack. His father lost a chunk of his body and, as the greatest knight, became reduced to nothing more than a fractured image of what he once was. Vito collapsed that day, questioning why his father didn't just leave the boy behind and run back to safety. Even during his father's final words, he reminded Vito that he is proud of his son, which is enough for him to be proud of. Vito's father also stated that he would have regretted running away for the rest of his life, and hoped that his dear son would come to understand his motivation when he grasped something more meaningful than his own life. Now, Vito stands before the men, in light of his father's words, as if to alter the course of his story, as if to become an even better man, against the treacherous organization he was once a part of. Vito recalls the godlike trials that he had to overcome, escaping to keep himself alive. He didn't want to face death and valued his life, realizing that he disappointed his father at the end of the day. Vito thinks that despite the situations surrounding his life, he was able to kindle his spirit and pride as a knight. Donning a smile on his face, Vito declares that he will no longer run away, and that he, too, has done despicable acts collaborating with the organization. Vito is aware that he will have to face the consequences, and wants to make things right in this battle. His subordinates can only bicker and laugh at the former knight, calling him a traitorous figure who ran away, with his tail between his legs. No matter their words, Vito's reawakened spirit does not change, as he makes his first move, immediately striking down one of the thugs with a lightning attack. His attack intimidates the rest of the men, because they can't even fathom someone of his caliber, who can deploy the use of magic. Vito claims that he is capable of fighting as a mage knight, as he used to be one back in his prime. Groton comes to take him on, amusingly questioning how long the knight will be able to stand against the dozens of trained warriors before him. With the onset of this battle, the scene returns to Maledic and Takumi. Takumi acknowledges Vito's change and decides to hurry up on his battle. He tells the Dark Magician that there is a lot he is unaware of, and immediately channels the second gate of his body hardening technique. Engulfed in smoke, Maledic is left with an important question. What is the second gate? Emerging from his strengthened state, Takumi is now operating his core at maximum output, ready to give the magician a beating he will never forget. Maledic knows that Takumi is getting more serious about his battle. Maledic is the most annoyed by Takumi's cunning, sharp eyes, and summons an army of the dead. The magician is bent on reminding Takumi that their reality is nothing but filled with absolute despair. Bro should worry about the hair on his head instead. He states that this newly formed army is his failed experiment only in appearance, as they still have enough power to slaughter any B-class in moments. Maledic finds himself in a hysterical state, thinking that he will tear Takumi to shreds with his 66 monsters. However, before he can finish his thoughts, Takumi has already started to tear them apart, mocking the magician for putting up the thinnest wall of sticks between them. I think we should call the police, because Takumi just verbally assaulted this man. The dark magician grows even more excited, and decides to enhance each of his failed puppets, this time aiming to finish off Takumi. The scene sweeps into Ultiko's battle, who is barely finding herself alive at this point. Bischa declares that they never had any chance of overcoming the organization, and questions why his goons haven't arrived just yet. Frau cries out for Ultiko's worry, to which Bischa crushes the elf into the ground, rendering her incredible shocks of pain. Bischa is furious that Ultiko can even smile after being faced with so much despair, and encourages them to give up at this point. Panting in her blooded state, Ultiko once again smiles, pissing off the hound Musclehead, who is so furious that he wants to kill them at once, defying the orders of his master. Bischa intends to crush Ultiko's face in order to get rid of her smile permanently. When he draws his superpowered punch to kill Ultiko, the elf apologizes to Frau, as well as the fainting memory of her mother, as if to accept her end. Tip: the Beast Girl bears witness to this event and doesn't know what to do. To defy the harsh and unbridled fate before them, Frau acts as a true hero and suffers the full might of the punch for Ultiko's sake. Drawn to a complete pause and utter shock, Ultiko sees Frau's bloodied self as she collapses to the ground. Not even Bischa knows what happened, and he only grows more furious that someone else messed with his fun, as he wanted to keep Frau for last. Accepting the finality of her dying breath, Frau apologizes to Ultiko, as she doesn't want to impose even more pain upon the elf, despite her tragic life. Ultiko grows shocked, knowing that Frau is the first person to acknowledge her miseries. The poor healer states that she wanted to be the one to protect Ultiko instead, reminding the elf of her mother's words about finding cherished loved ones. However, Bischa goes on to slam Frau's body into the ground, questioning how she is even alive. A sudden change begins to brew inside of Ultiko, a change so revolting that it influences Maledic's ancient treasure, which is furiously growing hot. With her state transformed into a powerful being, Ultiko demands the mutt remove his leg from Frau's body. Damn, she's about to throw some real hands. At first, Bischa feels insulted and refuses her demand. However, it doesn't take long for Ultiko to howl her demands once more, intimidating the beast with the weight of her unparalleled anger. Bischa's body reacts on its own, gaining distance from the elf, sensing the killing intent to be incredibly overwhelming. Over to Maledic's side, the seal is only getting undone, to the point that it is burning Maledic's hands, trying to contain the treasure's effects. However, Ultiko soon fades and collapses on the ground, unable to fully undo the seal with the might of her powers. Her attempt is the first sign that makes Maledic superbly worried about the people he is dealing with, deciding to kill them as soon as possible. However, the moment he looks over to Takumi, he is left astounded, as only one man is standing over the pile of bodies, and that happens to be Takumi himself. The dark magician is perplexed by his abilities and finds himself attacked at once. Takumi's super speed is so overwhelming that he doesn't even require a magic spell to narrow the distance. Maledic opts to deploy the almighty barrier against his attack, only for Takumi to completely shatter it into oblivion with a single swing. Bro is the definition of I don't give a crap. As a character, leaving the magician stunned beyond comparison, Maledic forcibly retreats using his flight magic. However, Takumi only follows by throwing projectiles as bolts. At first, they seem completely harmless until they connect with Maledic's body, rupturing heavy strikes all over him. Approaching the climax of the battle, Takumi thinks that his bolts are perfect for long-range assaults, paired with his strengthened swing of the pipe wrench. The combination is perfect for his battles, and Takumi finds the projectiles to be all the more convenient. Shoved into a corner, Maledic channels another power from the treasure box, attacking Takumi from his blind spot. Takumi evades at the final moment, and realizes that he would have suffered severe consequences without his strengthened state. Takumi's eyes widen the moment he sees the birth of a cunning monster. Maledic claims that the dungeon his organization resides in has his ownership over all, including the dungeon boss monster, which is a gigantic beast that Takumi must take down. Takumi isn't afraid and finds it ugly at the most. Maledic thinks that Takumi doesn't fare any chances with his monster because of the size difference and its durability. However, the Craftsman always finds a way, and decides to test out a weapon that he has kept secret for a long time. The gat is a tool that is often used to cut concrete, among other materials, and for various applications. And if anything, it should tell you enough about its appearance that Takumi is going to be chipping the living sushi out of this monster. The dungeon beast lunges forth to devour Takumi, only for the craftsman to casually evade and leap onto its body. Finding the perfect spot, Takumi fixates a point, and brace yourselves for this next scene. He obliterates the entire head of the monster with a single chisel impact. 10 out of 10 for a badass panel. Maledic is left flabbergasted by what is taking place before his eyes. Takumi claims that his tools have faced far tougher foes over the decades of his original life, so when it comes to actual living creatures, he finds the task as easy as splitting paper. Bro is casually dropping 50 diss tracks in one fight and calling himself OP at the same time. With nothing left in his arsenal, Maledic is confused and doesn't know who he is dealing with, while Takumi stands strong and daunting with his figure. The craftsman deploys the use of his megaphone and draws the attention of Frau, who is barely breathing at this point. We also see the climax of Vito's battle, as he, too, has successfully defeated the entire group by himself, despite suffering major injuries in the process. Takumi requests them to hang on for a few moments longer because he intends to finish the job at once. With his serious expression, he leaps off to finish the dark magician once and for all. On the other side, Bischa's annoyance takes another spike because of Takumi's announcement as he tries to kill Eltico. The little beast girl tries to offer herself and blocks Eltico, despite feeling the most afraid. Bischa laughs at the pitiable child for becoming a meat shield for someone else with her frail body. The dark magician tries to assure himself that he has defeated every single opponent that has come to challenge him. He thinks that simple philosophy is enough to defeat Takumi and decides to throw a wave of monsters against Takumi, intending to drain all of his mana. However, Takumi dodges the attack and flash steps before his eyes, using the transition skill, reminding Maledic that everything he has ever come up with has been the result of his wickedness. He reminds the treacherous magician of his malicious misdeeds, stealing the lives of the youth and causing suffering to all of the people who suffered at the hands of the organization. Takumi wants to return this pain with a striking answer, deciding to dole out the ultimate punishment. With those thoughts in mind, Takumi delivers his divine chisel of punishment, physically tormenting the dark magician as he finds his body deformed in tatters. With the defeat of the magician, the special box withholding the curse of Eltico also shatters, allowing her to regain her truly powerful self. Back to the scene where Bischa makes his final move. He fails to connect the strike and wears a confused expression. It is finally revealed that Pip was saved by a figure who has regained her almighty and all-powerful true self. The true form of Eltico soars through the battlefield, this time announcing herself with her real name, Lafrel. The scene switches to the perspective of two drunkards who are discussing the misery of the city of Bonas. Everyone knows that Bonas is the state that fell victim to the malicious criminal organization Zafat, which inevitably boasted the highest crime rates in the continent. Their powers surpassed that of even that great sage, who was once a Soluan and couldn't defeat them. It was known all around that these people were responsible for forcing kids to dig tunnels in their hideouts, the whole procedure being sickening to hear about. From the perspective of these outsiders, they wonder if someone would rise someday to finally hold the organization accountable for its crimes, to answer for their malicious acts in the form of a punishment they deserve. This answer and punishment manifests in the form of the reborn Lafrel, who stares down Bischa. The monster is a little disappointed being the bonehead that he is, because he expected Eltico to turn into some brooding monster of her own, instead of preserving her state as an elf. Lafrel doesn't pay any mind to his words, and only recalls Takumi's words about her gear instead. Bischa throws a temper tantrum, declaring only the muscle heads to be the strongest, and deeming the elf as a mere beanpole. Dude thinks his muscles are strong enough to protect him from the whooping he is about to receive. Lafrel, being the most elegant yet divine in her presence, casts a levitation spell and begins to engulf the surroundings in gales of black wind. The black wind overwhelms Bischa before rising into a tornado, acting as a prison for those inside. Bischa, being muscle-brained as he is, decides to muscle his way out by throwing a punch. The result is very simple and a lesson for people who think just like him, as Bischa finds his entire arm shattered. Following her initial attack, Lafrel channels a mass-bearing gale strike, before standing the tallest in the eye of the storm. Lafrel stares down the beast with merciless eyes, while Takumi cheers her on. Strengthening her body with her newly acquired magical armor, Lafrel prepares her strike. She remembers how brutally Bischa attacked Frau and pummeled her into the ground. With Frau's pain running through her mind, Lafrel manifests a powerful torpedo kick, an attack that slaughters her opponent. Bischa finds his ribcage completely crumbled by the weight of the bone-crushing attack. Lafrel stands as the prime victor of this battle, with her evolved state. Satisfied with this outcome, Takumi uses his megaphone to announce the ultimate consequence, as Zaphat's leaders have just fallen to the hands of their powers. The lower subordinates are shocked that they have just been overcome, while Frau and Vito, along with Pip, are happy that they managed to survive. Bearing his crude yet truthful personality, Takumi labels them a bunch of sore losers. The men find it difficult to believe that Takumi, who appears to be a midget, has just defeated the organization's strongest forces. Vito backs Takumi's claim, reminding the men that they're only coming to free the slaves. Fearing that they'll also be destroyed by their wrath, the men flee for their own lives, leaving Vito all to himself. Frau thinks that they managed to overcome the brutal challenge after all. However, Lafrel instantly collapses to the ground after the battle in her perilous state. Frau doesn't know what just happened. Meanwhile, in his dying state, the dark magician Maledic utters that even with the elf's rebirth and power, she had already suffered massive amounts of damage in her previous fight, which became her undoing. Maledic thinks that it was well worth seeing the might of her true strength after all. Takumi hears his words, and declares that he has no intention of letting her die. Placing his hand on the ground, Takumi decides to look for cores and narrow their whereabouts so that he can transport them at once. He knows that the process is no different than searching for magic stones, and reminds himself of Frau's words in their first encounter when she tells him he possesses incredible godlike eyes. Takumi channels the might of his divine eyes and taps into its full power, extending the reach of his search to a level so precise that he locates Frau's weapon. Using that as his target paired with his eyes of clairvoyance, Takumi decides to transition over to the exact location. At the location, Frau is fearful of Eltico's state and begs for the elf to get up for her sake. In a sudden flash, Eltico's body recovers back to full health. Frau and Eltico look ahead to find Takumi standing right in front of them. The craftsman is proud of their efforts and tells them to rest assured as they have been saved. Unable to contain her emotions, Frau jumps ahead to embrace Takumi, receiving his warm smile. Meanwhile, Maledic has probably received a dozen surprises in his fight with Takumi, as he still can't believe that someone like him can be a prodigious warrior and a magic user capable of using healing spells all at the same time. Maledic declares Takumi to be an outstanding force to be reckoned with. Takumi, on the other hand, tells his friends that it's time for them to free the rest of the slaves. He proceeds to hover over to Vito and heals his body with the gun. After that, they free the many slaves that the malicious organization had entrapped for many years, giving them a taste of freedom that they have longed to experience. Pip brings Takumi over to a special prison, where an older man is sitting in meditation. Takumi is surprised that these knuckleheads also decided to imprison an older man. He breaks free of the cage and decides to give the prisoner a helping hand. When Takumi recovers the older man and meets Frau, she is left stunned at once. Frau declares that the person in front of them is the Great Sage of Bonus. Takumi realizes that he has just rescued the Chief of Bonus. The Great Sage finally speaks, stating that he was once the former Soluan, and someone deemed the Magician of Light. He wonders how he should repay the utmost kindness that Takumi and his friends blessed them with. We literally have a budget Baby Yoda in this universe. Drop a like on this video for that reason alone. The Great Sage is met with great applause and appreciation from his people after the defeat of the evil organization. Takumi can't fathom the specialty behind this old geezer, as he is one himself. All Takumi can think about is the fact that this supposedly great figure stupidly got caught in the first place. The Great Sage mutters that he was outsmarted while he was sleeping, which comes as a surprise to Takumi. He also clarifies that they used a curse-eating spell in his sleep, which he managed to overcome with his absurd powers and stay alive at the minimum. Takumi still doesn't appreciate him and thinks that the old geezer slept a little too soundly. They share a small banter, but eventually the Great Sage acknowledges the group's greatness. He terms Takumi, one bearing the divine eyes, Eltico, the demon elf, and surprisingly Frau, the cleric of Lantern Flame. The Great Sage believes that they've gathered quite an interesting group by themselves. Frau fixates on his words and questions why she is considered a cleric of the Lantern Flame. Her inquisitive question surprises the Great Sage, who thinks Frau is unaware of her true abilities. The Great Sage explains that a Lantern Flame is basically a dual ability that produces explosive flames and heals others with its healing magic. He He also mentions that the Flame Princess of the Soluan faction, Mers von Freya, is the only person ever to use this power and happens to be Frau's mother. Frau is shocked about his knowledge of her deceased mother and inquires for further details. The Great Sage also clarifies that the Flame Princess has only been assumed dead over the past 15 years, and there have been real sightings of her in the Beastman country of Fanga, as per the rumors. The revelation comes as a shock to her, but the Great Sage emphasizes that the rumors originated from the White Wolf village. Smiling at this turnabout, Takumi declares their next stop to be that of the Beast Kingdom. Knowing that they are detouring from their original intention of going to Azuma, Frau questions Takumi. The Craftsman explains that her mother takes top priority, as he values the love between a parent and their child. This man is so based, W's in the comments for Takumi. His words strike deep in the heart of the cleric, who begins to cry, grateful for Takumi's assistance. Turning his attention to the former Knight of Emporizer, Takumi questions what Vito is going to do from here on out. The man declares that he's going to head back to his faction, aiming to fulfill his part of the journey. Frau is shocked, because she knows that Vito will be sentenced to death because of his traitorous desertion. But Vito isn't too worried because he finds it a reasonable outcome. He appreciates having traveled with Takumi's group and finds them to be a grateful bunch. Frau has trouble accepting the reality, and the Great Sage of Bonas decides to offer Vito a chance to work for him. With a baffled Vito looking right at him, the Great Sage tells him that they're in need of people who are supposed to rebuild the city from the ground up, giving Vito a way to atone for his sins by doing honest work. Vito is shocked that he's being offered a legitimate job, despite his past portfolio of betrayals, along with his former connection to the treasonous organization. The Great Sage goes on ahead to ensure that Vito's presence will be kept safely hidden away from the world, going as far as a statewide cover-up. Vito's face turns to shock once more, and it's also because the Great Sage witnessed his struggle against an army just now. The Great Sage is kind, and claims that it would only help Vito to rebuild a life that he has wanted to have. The Knight crumbles, while Takumi comes over to him with some words of his own. He emphasizes that failures are a part of life, and that one should always get back on their feet. His words remind Vito of his father, as he thanks the Craftsman for all of his efforts. "My guy received the most 180-degree character development I have ever seen. That's awesome." Just when they thought their worries were all over, Maledic, in his final form, comes crashing right back, hoping to destroy them, because he knows there is no end where he survives the wrath of his superior. Takumi questions the identity of this mysterious person, to which the Great Sage explains that the commander of the 6th Division of the Demon King's army is a monster known as Illumimi, who is also responsible for deploying magical devices to his underlings. The Great Sage mentions that this being is so powerful that he is currently stretching his control over the continent, aiming to topple the powers from within. Maledic added his comment, stating that his mission was to conquer Bonas and to fund the aid to the front lines so that they could reproduce an army of demons and destroy the country. Honestly, this dude got more forms than Goku, just die already after getting clapped. Frau is shocked that Maledic would go to such lengths to betray his kind. Eltico tries to channel his fully powered state, before collapsing back to her base form in defeat. The Great Sage tells her that she has sapped herself of all her mana, making the transformation incomplete. Maledic deploys his dark magic using a cunning form, called the Forbidden Arts. This power is only activated after trading one's own life, and with this power, Maledic summons an army of dead skeletons and expels their strength to advance his own goals. By the end, the lump of skeletal creatures wakes up a gigantic meteor of corpses. Vito is left speechless, knowing that if this ball of destruction falls upon them, the entire labyrinth will level to nothingness. With the Great Sage around, there is hardly anything to worry about. He goes on to show off his skills, deploying a light wall to barricade the attack, impressing the likes of Frau. However, he is unable to hold off the attack for much longer because of the mana consumption. Takumi uses this opportunity to get Frau into the big picture, helping her aim at her target. Takumi tells her that she can securely make the shot, and goes on to order the Great Sage to deactivate his wall. After the wall's deactivation, the mountain of corpses begins to descend upon them once more. Takumi prepares Frau, and states that he is going to lend her his powers to charge the attack. With Frau's confidence brimming, Takumi declares that this is the might of the one-armed hero, and fires a shot of mass destruction, completely annihilating the corpses into ashes. Vito Rai is deeply impressed and thinks that he would never have won against Frau, even in their first encounter. Takumi celebrates the victory, while the townsfolk bow their heads in appreciation for the group that saved their lives. Takumi looks forward to an exciting feast from them upon his next visit, and also bids Vito a heartfelt farewell, hoping that he stands up to the challenges of the future. Vito crumbles, remembering the words of his father, and begins to cry, hoping to gather his strength and assist Takumi someday once more. Suddenly, Takumi experiences a sharp pain, a pain unlike any other, a pain that is much greater than the wrath of the Demon King, as he shouts into oblivion. What is this pain, one might ask? Takumi is missing his cigarettes, after all, as this world doesn't really have tobacco in the first place, or any sources of it. He tries to get the great sage on his side, hoping that he will provide him with some useful information. But all that ends up happening is that they argue back and forth like two old boomers. Ah yes, bro's biggest weakness is not the world-ending apocalypse, but tobacco. Viewing this discussion from afar, Eltiko remembers the kind words of her mother, who once told her that she would find a reason to smile from her heart. Donning a smile on her face for the first time, Eltiko shines beautifully with her expression, leaving her party astounded. It is also revealed that the name Lafrel means the smiling face. That fateful day became the demise of the world's largest criminal organization, which a measly party of adventurers took out. Observing this story from afar is Commander General Illumumi himself, who thinks that Maledict was a giant waste of his time, as he didn't even succeed in the mission. Illumumi is impressed by Frau's gun specifically, and explains that the dwarves are an ancient race of blacksmiths, possessing legendary crafting techniques that angered the gods and led to their own extinction. Lol. Imagine being so broken that the gods have to literally wipe you out of existence. Illumumi states that all SS class weapons are prototypes of the weapons made by that specific clan, and that some even surpass such a class. The most interesting detail about these divine weapons is that they are said to be crafted by the progenitor of the dwarves, a being so powerful that he became the first to invent craftsmanship in their kind. That being, according to the legends, is submitted as the Grand Dwarf himself. The scene switches to the front line of Adzuma, where Imperial General Rule is reported to have breached their defenses. Rule recalls that their general, Amista, was supposed to be stationed at the second gate. Still, Rule's guard explains that Amista left to provide support to the third gate instead, allowing the enemy to overcome their defenses. Arriving from behind, a knight of Soluan in shining armor, known as Flittum the Unsinkable, decides to recapture the second gate all by himself just for the fun of it. Rule thinks that Flittum has gone out of his mind without devising a strategy. The Soluan Knight emphasizes that they work as freelancers, more or less, who have united because of the status and the riches that come attached to their high-ranking quests. He also talks about Heathland, who is currently busy trying to impress General Aklina at the fourth gate. Flittum has strong reason to believe that Heathland will come flying over to the second gate to show off more of his skills in front of Aklina, and Flittum doesn't want to share the glory. Rule tries to give him a hand in his quest, but Flittum once again emphasizes that if he conquers this battle alone, he will be deemed and hailed as a legend. Basically, he is more obsessed with the idea of being branded a legendary figure, and comes as a cool figure in the eyes of Rule, who thinks that he bears a sense of freedom unlike any other. Leaping from the cliff, Flittum marches ahead to etch his name into history, hoping to become a legend. However, the stupid knight doesn't even know that he's going the opposite way. Bro thought he was cooking, but he burnt the entire kitchen instead. The scene jumps to the castle, where the king has reported the defeat of the terrifying organization Zafvat. Of course, he finds it difficult to accept such a reality, and quickly realizes that Takumi and Frau were likely the ones responsible for bringing down such an organization. The king is so impressed that he wants to share a feast with Takumi once again upon his next visit. Surprisingly, Takumi teleports right in front of him and claims that he's back. The king thinks that he's dreaming of his voice and suddenly realizes that Takumi is standing there in the flesh. Takumi drops them a gift, which is basically a grilled ray, and decides to teleport back without an explanation. In his workshop, it is revealed that Takumi has acquired many other magic stones, specifically found in Bonas. He also knows that he has a pile of work to take care of, most importantly being that of his team's defensive equipment. Takumi is adapting to his eyes and knows that the core extraction skill is something only he possesses. He slowly understands the intricate nature of the cores and spends the entire night working on his prized projects. The following day, Takumi presents them with various pieces of equipment, which is a pleasant surprise to Pip and the others. His team boards the vehicle, setting their eyes on the White Wolf village in the country of Fanga. Just when they drive away, the king suddenly realizes that the White Wolf village is home to the tribe, possessing the most combat strength. The tribe is considered one of the 3 great beast tribes, and the village is surrounded by a terrifying forest, where only the strongest live to survive. The most important fact is the White Wolf tribe's unrelenting hatred towards humans. Takumi and the others cannot learn about any of these details, as they are already on their way. After completing their journey, they arrive in the Fanga territory, home to the Great Vern Jungle. Frau explains that the area is considered a demonic territory, rendered without much exploration by mankind, meaning the jungle is teeming with all kinds of threatening species. Takumi and his group make their way into the jungle with caution, until they hear a man's panting breath. The man tries to escape from a velociraptor, realizing that he's actually done for. Takumi grabs him in the midst of his escape, leading to the man's frustration, as he frantically tells him about the beast. The man thinks that this midget is going to get killed by the dinosaur, but Takumi simply waves his wrench and bashes the dinosaur clean, ending it at once, as it is too much of an annoyance in his negotiation. He really said, "I don't give a flying fish about this dinosaur, haha."